Hello?
Not all ghost stories are born from fiction. Some are crafted from the fear we summon together.
Hey you, will you play with me?
Welcome to my haunted world.
Hello everyone. I hope you all are doing well. Tonight I am going to share with you a chilling tale, not of an old house or a haunted ruin, but a ghost story of a spirit created by people themselves. Yes, you heard that right. Tonight's story is based on a true event which took place in Canada in 1972 and is still a subject of research around the world today. If you're listening alone, wearing headphones, you might just feel someone sitting beside you, completely silent, waiting for you to call out their name. So let's begin tonight's story. Philip, the man we made. Shall we begin? This story is not about any supernatural curse. It's not about a skeleton found in an old graveyard either. Rather, this is the story of a ghost, one that people created themselves. And the most frightening truth is that ghost really responded. In 1972, in the city of Toronto, Canada, a group of researchers planned an incredible experiment. They decided to create a spirit from their imagination. The research was led by psychologist Dr. Richard Godfrey. Along with him were 7 volunteers, each connected to science or history in some way. However, their appearances, beliefs, and mentalities were all different. Their names were Helen, Marcus, Lisa, Andre, Paul, Janet, and Vera. The centerpiece of their research was a large table. Sitting around it, they collectively created a ghost story, naming the spirit Philip Aylesford. They wrote detailed accounts of his birth, love, betrayal, and guilt and pinned them on the wall. The room was silent. Outside, the cold December wind blew. Suddenly, Helen said, "Imagine if he really can hear us, if he comes back from imagination." Marcus laughed. "He will come, but only in our minds, not in reality." Their research began promptly at 9 p.m. Dim lights, thick curtains drawn, a meditative atmosphere. Together, they started telling Philip's story, calling out his name, just like a seance. Nothing happened for the first few days, but on the 5th night, something unusual occurred. The table lamp placed in a corner of the room flickered on and off by itself. Andre attributed it to a faulty wiring. But the next day, the same lamp flickered again at the exact moment Vera asked, "Philip, are you here with us?" Lisa whispered, "If he truly awakens..." At that moment, Helen clearly heard a voice inside her mind, "I am here." But no one spoke it aloud. If you love someone so much that you'd give your life for them and they die because of you, then does that guilt never leave even after death? Philip Aylesford, no person by that name was ever born in Canada. There is no record of him anywhere. Yet the Toronto Society for Psychical Research, TSPR, created a fictional life story for this spirit. They thought if everyone believed together in a supernatural character, maybe their collective energy would bring it to life. Lisa wrote Philip's backstory. The story went like this. Philip Aylesford was a 17th century English nobleman. He once fell in love with a gypsy girl named Margot at the royal court, but Philip's family did not approve of their relationship. One day, the royal family accused 𝐿𝐴𝐷 of witchcraft. Philip did not protest. 𝐿𝐴𝐷 was burnt alive in the middle of the town square. Racked with guilt, Philip later jumped off the palace roof and killed himself. Though the story was dramatic, the whole team vividly imagined every bloody moment as if they had seen it themselves. Paul, who worked mostly with history, once said, "Sometimes I feel like we are not just imagining, but calling forth an ancient spirit." Marcus laughed. "You all might as well make a cheap paranormal documentary called The Man We Made." But that very night, the table seemed to move slightly on its own. There wasn't even a breeze in the room. Everyone froze. Helen slowly asked, "Philip, are you here with us?" A clear knocking sound came from beneath the table. Everyone was shocked. Two members looked under the table but saw nothing. Then Paul wrote in his diary, "First knock, no explanation. Felt like a response." That was the first answer they received from Philip. From then on, day by day questions were asked, and 1, 2, or 3 knocks came as answers. One day Lisa asked, "Philip, do you still weep for Margot?" 2 knocks, "Yes." Helen asked, "Do you blame us?" 1 knock, "No." Veera asked, "Will you always be with us?" 3 knocks, silence. Then suddenly the lights went out. As the events unfolded, Philip seemed to transform from mere imagination to a real presence. And that very night, one of them, Veera, spoke of seeing a shadowy figure standing at her bedroom door.
Fear is not just imagination. Fear is a kind of silence, where even when there's nothing, it feels like everything is standing right beside you. That little heated room in Toronto had now become almost a regular séance room. The room was simple. A large clock on the wall, curtains always drawn, a dark wooden table, and 8 chairs. But as the days passed, the silence inside the room seemed to thicken like a slow, suffocating air. Helen wrote in her notebook, "Every night at 9, dim room, no one laughs anymore, no one asks much either. We just sit, stare, and wait for the knock to come." Lisa no longer asked questions. She simply read Philip's crafted biography, like a chant, about Margot, the night she was burned, and Philip's crushing guilt. And during those readings, the candle on the table would flicker lightly. There was no wind, yet it felt as if someone walked past. Andre bravely asked, "Philip, are you here?" One clear knock and then another. 2 knocks. Yes. Paul slowly asked, "Philip, are you watching us?" A long silence. Then 1 knock. Lisa felt something lightly brush her shoulder. She jumped. There was no one there. Later, when the night's audio recording was reviewed, a breath was heard, one that didn't match any of the participants. Helen wrote in her diary, "We didn't just make Philip real. We made a space for something else to enter." The next morning, Janet didn't show up. She later called and said she had woken up at 3 a.m. and seen a human-shaped shadow standing in the half-light near her door. But there was no light outside the window, and the door had been closed. At the next séance, no one spoke at first. Lisa just stared at Philip's sketch, the one they had drawn together. Suddenly, a knocking sound came from the corner of the room. Once, then again, as if someone was gently tapping the leg of the table. Helen was now afraid. She slowly said, "Philip, if you're here, we are ending tonight's séance. Please, leave us in peace." 3 light knocks came in response, and then silence. No one could sleep that night. They kept wondering, how could a fictional character shake the very foundation of their real lives? And if all of this was just imagination, then who was standing in the darkness of the room? When the lights go out, we don't just see darkness. Sometimes someone stands there, whispering. Over the next few weeks, it felt like that research room in Toronto had entered another world. Andre, who had been the most rational one from the beginning, no longer laughed. He simply said, "Someone or something is carrying a part of us away from this room every night." Paul stayed quiet. His eyes showed sleeplessness, his face lined with worry. He said, "Did we create Philip? Or did something else use Philip to return through us?" Session audio recording, week 6. Helen had left the recorder on. That day, no one asked any questions. They simply sat in the room. Lights off, only candlelight. At 9:21 p.m., on the tape, a whisper is heard. Shh. A clear voice, as if someone standing very close was trying to silence them. But no one in the room had heard it at the time. After listening to the tape, Lisa widened her eyes and said, "I don't recognize this voice, but it feels horribly real, like someone was just about to say my name and then stopped." After that event, Janet fell ill. She said, "Every time I try to sleep, I feel someone walking beside me. No footsteps, just the dull thud of slow pacing on the wooden floor. Thud, thud, thud." Andre, at his home, noticed strange scratches on his wall, as if someone had clawed through it. But that wall had been freshly painted just a week ago. Paul finally said directly, "Philip is not our friend. He might not even be Philip. Whoever we are calling, even he doesn't know who he is. He just knows he is here now." Helen slowly whispered, "He was just a story. We made him real. Now he wants to turn us into a story." One day Veera said, "When I am alone, it feels like someone is calling my name in a very low voice. Veera, Veera. And the scariest part is that voice has started to sound familiar." Lisa suggested they stop the seances, but Paul objected. "If we stop, will he go silent?" "No. If we stop, he might knock louder." That night, a recording placed under the table picked up a slow ticking sound, like the ticking of a clock. But there was no clock in the room. Helen wrote in her diary, "It now feels like the room isn't ours anymore. We are just guests, and someone is patiently waiting for us to go completely silent."
Most people think fear comes from the outside. But when fear walks through your door and enters your bedroom, that's when you realize you are no longer alone. Helen no longer wants to attend the night sessions. She admits, "Even after returning home, I feel like the seance is still going on. There's always someone standing in a dark corner, not looking, not speaking, just present." Lisa doesn't say anything, but the empty red haze in her eyes hides something unsaid. Janet announces she won't return to the group. In her trembling voice, "During sleep, someone sits by my feet. When I wake up in the morning, there are creases on the bedsheet, exactly like someone had been sitting there all night." Andre, who once argued from a logical standpoint, now speaks with a defeated tone. "This is no longer biology or a trick of the mind. This is something I know. I saw it with my own eyes." Paul wants to record that night session on video for the first time. They all sit around the table, reciting Philip's story, calling his name over and over, asking no questions. At 9:48 p.m., in the right corner of the video frame, a chair slowly pushes back on its own. Everyone remains silent. No one notices it then. But when they watch the video later, Janet says, "I felt it. Someone was sitting behind me. I just didn't want to believe it." One night, someone knocks 3 times on Helen's door. She looks out the window. No one is there, but someone is staring from inside the second-floor window. The next morning, she writes in the group chat, "I know what I'm saying is impossible, but I feel trapped in my own home." Paul makes a decision. We've been trying to connect with him for so long. Now it's time to say goodbye. No candles, no table, nothing. This ends now. Lisa doesn't object. Andre only whispers, "But will he want us to stop?" Paul says nothing and takes Philip's sketch down from the wall, tearing it to pieces. The air in the room suddenly feels heavier. Helen turns around. The door is half open. For a moment, it feels like someone was standing right there, but no one's there. Paul writes the final entry in his diary. The presence didn't come from outside. We brought it in. And now, no matter how many times we shut the door, it knows the way in. Fear doesn't always arrive with a sound. Sometimes fear arrives in total silence when no one's in the room, but you know someone was. The room of the Toronto Society for Psychical Research is now closed. The chairs are stacked to the side, the table covered with cloth, and the papers pinned to the wall with Philip's story all burned. Paul has cut off contact with everyone. Lisa sees the group messages but doesn't reply. Andre has moved abroad, no trace of him. Helen was the only one brave enough to gather her final thoughts in writing, on the last page of her notebook. Helen's note, recovered later. We stopped the seance, stopped everything. Yet every night at exactly 9 o'clock, the wooden floor beneath my feet shifts slightly. I know it could be a coincidence, but I feel it. We shut the room, not the spirit. Was Philip ever real? Or in calling his name again and again, did we invite someone else, some unknown presence? One night, Lisa returns to the seance room alone. The room is completely silent, lights off. She lights a single candle. There's an eerie familiarity in the air, as if something has been waiting a long time, waiting for her to return. Lisa stands beside the table and says, "Philip, we know you were just our imagination, but what came through was not you." Silence. No knock, but the candle's flame flickers, and a single drop of wax rolls down, as if spelling the word yes. Lisa doesn't say another word. She simply blows out the candle and leaves. No scientific explanation has ever been found for what happened, but none of those who sat around that table ever remained the same. Each of them now carries a silent shadow within. It never speaks. It leaves no trace. Only sometimes, in the middle of the room, a soft sound is heard. Knock.
Sometimes we believe in something so deeply that it's forced to become real. The question is, once it does, do we still have control over it?
Lisa never returned to the seance room after lighting that candle. Paul burnt his diary, but the last page survived, with a single line written. He wasn't Philip. He never was. He just needed a story, and we gave him one. Eventually, the Toronto Society for Psychical Research officially shut down the experiment. They stated, this was a type of collective thought form experiment, which proves how powerful the human mind truly is. But one question remained unanswered, a question no one had ever spoken aloud. If what we summoned wasn't really Philip, then who was it? An audio recording sent from a friend's phone reveals Janet speaking softly. I haven't been to a seance in a long time, but even now, I sometimes feel the breath of someone sitting in my room. I know it's nothing to be scared of, but it feels like someone is trying to take over my story, my laughter, my voice, my home. In everything, there seems to be an extra shadow. Andre, who left the country, says even in his new apartment in a new country, there's a soft knock on his wall every night at exactly 9 p.m. Not a tube light, not ambient noise, but a clear, definite sound, as if someone saying, I am here. Years later, Helen writes in an unpublished essay, we didn't create Philip, we just opened a channel. And from within that emptiness, someone, some entity found an identity, a story, a name, a table, and then used our belief to make itself real. The room is empty, no table, no chairs, no people. Only an old calendar by the door, stuck on December 1972. A faint knock is heard. Soft wind outside, but no one inside the room. Still, faint scuff marks on the floor, as if someone had been pacing moments ago. You may think it was all imagination, but every night at 9, he still returns to that room. Maybe searching for a new story. Maybe your story will be the one he chooses next. If this story made you feel fear, then remember, the scariest part is, it's based entirely on a true incident, the Philip experiment. Year 1972. Location Toronto, Canada. Organization Toronto Society for Psychical Research, or TSPR, led by Dr. 𝐂𝐴𝐥𝐢𝐩 and Iris Owen. The goal of this research was, are ghosts real, or do we create them with our minds? They created a fictional ghost's biography, naming him Philip Aylesworth, a 17th century English nobleman with a tragic story of love, betrayal, and guilt. Their 8-member group held seances for weeks, and gradually, strange events began to occur. The table moved on its own. Candle flickered without wind. Philip responded to questions with knocks. Unknown whispers were recorded on audio. One member claimed to see a shadowy figure. All of these events were documented in official reports, tape recordings, and observational logbooks. Dr. Owen later said, Philip was imagined, but what he did was real. And if you still don't believe, then try this. Tomorrow night at 9 p.m., sit around a table, light a candle, and call a name over and over. Philip, Philip, Philip. Let's see if he answers you too. That was tonight's story, Philip, the man we made. Maybe after hearing the whole tale, there's one question circling in your mind. Was it real?
All I'll say is this. If you don't believe it, then one night when the clock strikes 9, sit alone in a quiet room, close your eyes and softly whisper the name, Philip. Who knows, maybe the silence in the corner will shift just a little. Sending you all my warmest regards. Stay well, stay safe. And when you listen to these ghost stories, don't always try to separate reality from imagination. Because sometimes it's the imagination that stands right in front of us as reality. Stay safe in the dark, and may He watch over you.